Community 101, the Community Maturity Model. Welcome to the Introduction to the Community Maturity Model, developed by the Community Roundtable. Today, we'll discuss the 8 competencies of productive online communities, the 4 stages of community maturity, specific markers of community maturity, and how to use the community maturity model for assessing and benchmarking the maturity of your community. The community maturity model, developed by the Community Roundtable, articulates the 2 concepts required to advance the business of community. First, it defines the 8 competencies required to build successful business communities. Second, it articulates how these competencies progress from hierarchical organizations to those that have embraced a networked approach to their business. First published in 2009, the Community Maturity Model is widely used by community professionals as a tool for communication, gap analysis, roadmap planning, strategy development, success measurement, and more. Let's take a closer look at the elements of the model. The 8 competencies of the Community Maturity Model refer to the elements of a productive online community. Strategy refers to how community objectives are defined and linked to the organization's business strategy. Leadership looks at how community members and an organization's leadership influence community engagement. Culture measures the norms and levels of community participation. Community management refers to the resources dedicated to managing a productive community and approach to engagement and moderation. Content and programming are assets that attract and promote interactions among members. Policies and governance are community rules, guidelines, and processes. Tools are the infrastructure that enable activity, engagement, and behaviors. Metrics and measurement look at how the community measures health and progress. The Community Maturity Model has 4 stages that track how communities mature. In Stage 1, organizations generally use social technology or community structures in an ad hoc manner. In Stage 2, organizations focus on creating structures to support their community strategy and dedicating resources to formalizing policies and processes. By the 3rd stage, the community program is well established and generating value. Communities in this stage have dedicated resources to carry out the community strategy and can match metrics to progress. By Stage 4, organizations have undergone major philosophical, cultural, and structural changes, or they've been a networked organization from the start. The community is central to the business, and business processes and models rely on a shared value approach. All management looks like community management, and although hierarchy and transactional processes do not go away, they are informed by and operate in an environment of shared value and networked communications. According to the State of Community Management Research, age is not an objective maturity indicator. Rather, things like hiring a full-time community manager, having a measurable community strategy, and the ability to measure community value are more reliable indicators of progress. We use the analogy of a journey to describe building a community or community program. This caterpillar map illustrates that community maturity is not a linear timeline, but rather a series of these maturity indicators or milestones that lead to a more networked organization. The State of Community Management Research uses these milestones for community maturity assessment. The Community Maturity Model isn't so much a grading system for communities, but a way to measure progress and plan for future growth. The State of Community Management Research assesses the average maturity of communities and the average maturity of the best-in-class or most mature segment for comparison. You can assess the maturity of your community with the Community Maturity Score, which estimates your community's maturity across all 8 competencies. You can also benchmark your maturity. In this example, you can compare against the average and best-in-class communities surveyed in the State of Community Management Research. For example, you can see that this community is more mature than average in some competencies like strategy, and less mature in others like culture. If you haven't benchmarked your community's maturity, you can do so today. Start the Community Score Assessment at the.cr/score. The best use of benchmarking is to see trends and use those to trigger deeper discussions about your approach. Although it cannot define priorities unique to your organization, it's a great input to strategic conversation. Use this information to ask questions and prompt conversations. Are you happy with your community's current state? Are you where you expected to be? Or where you want to be? Determine what your priorities are and work those into planning for the future. You can also benchmark your community against itself to track your progress over time. Remember to consider your community's unique context and strategy as you evaluate what you learn and decide how to use it. Although it offers an objective comparison, benchmarking does not provide a complete analysis of your community's performance. Let's review the key takeaways from today's lesson. We looked at the elements of the community maturity model, which are 8 competencies to build successful online communities, and 4 stages that track how communities mature. Community maturity is not dependent on age, and the model uses objective markers and milestones to measure community maturity. Finally, we explored how to use the model as a framework for maturity assessment, benchmarking, and roadmap planning. To learn more about the Community Maturity Model and the Community Roundtable's other research and services, visit communityroundtable.com.